This is actually the first father's interview on the Second Class Parent podcast. Today we have Rick with us, and I'm going to let Rick give us a rundown on what's going on with his story and what he's been through. How you doing today, Rick?
Not too bad, man. It's not 2020 anymore, so I can at least say that.
So why don't you tell us, the listeners, a little bit about your story and what happened with you?
Um, well, try not to go back too far, but it's a pretty in-depth story. Um, my daughter's mother and I we married back in 2011. Um, she had a daughter probably around 2009, and we were together for about a year and a half ish, maybe. So uh, I'd say about 2 years. We were married after a year, and then we were together maybe almost a year. I during that time, I developed a really close relationship with a little girl. She's never met her father. Um, Biological father's never been in the picture. Name's not on the birth certificate, stuff like that. So, um, and so her mother and I split up, and she wasn't my child, so I filed for divorce. I wasn't going to, you know, do anything as far as custody goes. I mean, she wasn't my child, but her mother kept reaching out, saying, "Hey, she wants to see you. She misses you."
Sure.
And and for me, I'm like, cool. So I would see her sporadically. And I remember the first time, I brought her back over to the apartment that we were staying in, when me and her mother split up. And um, I remember her taking her shoes to her empty room, because this was her room. When we were married, I got her own little room, and she was probably 3 or 4 at the time. So, but I remember her taking her shoes to her room, and that was probably the first heartbreaking thing that I saw, because to her it was home. So, um, so I stayed in contact, and probably about a year later, her mother and I met, discussed what we are going to do as far as the divorce, and 3 days later, her mother attempted suicide. So she called me, said, "Hey, can you meet me over here?" Sent me shared her location. And so sure. I mean, because last I remember the conversation we had 3 days ago, it was, this, I'm still going to go through with this. This is the way it is. There was no harm, no foul. We hugged.
Right.
And man, 3 days later, man, she attempted suicide. So I found her car on the side of the road, and you know, um, had to call the police, and it just turned into a big fiasco. So try not to go down too many details, man, but it's a long story.
Okay.
So, anyways, I went to the hospital. We were still legally married, so I was like, look, like, I just want her to get the treatment that she needs, like, something what's going on. And after that time, that's when I began, getting a little girl every weekend, because I was like, if I don't, this girl's fucked,
Right.
because her biological dad's gone. Her mother's sitting there trying to kill herself, and she was bouncing around from house to house to house. Um, so I just began picking her up on Fridays, taking her to school on Mondays. I'll keep her every single weekend. I'm a single man. This was 6 or 7 years ago,
Right.
I think, somewhere around there. So I'm in my early 30s, and um, so fast forward probably about a year. a year after that, my father dies. And a month later, her mother comes to me and says, I can't take care of her. Can you take care of her? And I was like, yeah, sure, bring her over. No problem. So I'm dealing with my dad's estate. I'm the executor. I'm also having my mother live with me now. And then I've got a little girl that I'm trying to raise as well. And during that time, her mother had gotten admitted to the mental hospital a couple more times. So, dealing with the things that we all deal with in the custody situation, where the mothers, we didn't at that time, we didn't have a custody agreement. It was literally, here you go, and so she pretty much dropped her off on my doorstep for about 9 months. And then, 9 months later, she tried to show back up and was like, hey, you need to bring her over here. I'm gonna call the police.
Wow.
And I was like, so like, that's like, I understand that that's what you want, but like, this is what she's accustomed to. Like, we need to discuss this. So, but I did. I'm like, I don't want no fucking problems. Right. And so I dropped off at her mom's. And so then we began, getting her week on, week off. Okay. Again, no custody paperwork, no legal, nothing like that. And, I was still trying to do things for her, man, put her in karate, things like that, and trying to do activities. And, it was just a fight, man. And so I'm just like, I've got no choice but to go to court. And I told her, I was like, listen, I don't want to go to court. I don't think you want to go to court. And I mean, if I go into this courtroom, the judge is going to wonder why this white man is coming after custody of this little black girl, and he's not biologically related to her. Like, there's going to be some questions. They're going to have some questions. Right. So it was initially a pretty significant fight. She tried to bring up stuff that she did in the past, and it was like, look, my lawyer was like, look, once you dropped her off on his doorstep, anything that you guys had like amongst yourselves, like fighting or arguing or whatever, that shit's out the window. I think if I could give anybody some tips on court, it's like, just document stuff, man. Dude, if there's any chat history that you ever want to keep for the rest of your life, it's your child's mother or child's father, because it's very, like, in my case, because I'm not biologically related to her, our issue as a third party was simply just establishing relationship. Like, who am I actually to her? And if I didn't have documentation of her mother saying, you're such a great dad, happy Father's Day, thanks for being such a good dad to her, I would have had nothing.
Right.
So I know that people's situations are different, but just document. So the trial didn't go very long. We actually ended up settling out of court with an agreement, which is what they would call a consent custody order. So that basically means that her mother and I agreed to a custody schedule, and I hired an attorney. So, like, let me make sure that's clear to everybody. If you're a man, you better go to court with an attorney. I mean, third party or not. But I hired an attorney, and we drafted a lot of clauses in there that have gotten contempt. She's treated those clauses with contempt several times. But the best interest of the child is another tip that I would use for anybody in any way, whether it's third party, female, male. When you are interacting with another adult about your child, like, think of that first. Like, you wake up in the morning before you pee, think, is this in the best interest of the child? Like, because if it goes to court and it has to go before the judge, that's your only leg to stand on. Now, so we signed it. Literally 2 weeks later, after we signed it, I had her with me. But there was so much that happened just before that, because like her mother and I were operating on a schedule, and I thought it was like, I was like, okay, like we can make this work, cool. She was in a school that was close to her mother's house, and it wasn't too far from my new house, because once she got dropped off on my doorstep, my aunt was like, look, you need to get a house, because she has to have her own room and she has to have her own stuff, and like, so they're like, you got to build a house. So that's what I did. Was I went after and I built a house in a safe neighborhood, so she could have stability. And literally a week after I signed, like on the house, moved in, her mother ripped her out of the school, went to another county, basically cut off all like communication. And so I had to go to court for emergency return to status quo. It's the ex parte order. Okay, ex parte order means that the other party is not present. The judge will listen to your testimony, and it's testimony. If you've got facts, great, but it's testimony that they'll make a ruling on. So I said, well, I don't know where she's at. I don't know where I don't know. And so we ended up, once I finally found her and got her served, we went back to the week on, week off schedule. But she was in school an hour away from my house. So the place I was working at the time, like I told him, I was like, this is a court order. I've got to do this. So I've got to take her to school. So I would drive 2 hours one way, 2 hours back and forth in the morning, 2 hours back and forth in the evening, just to take her to school on my week, because there was no documentation set up, and to me, I use it as somebody's taking advantage of me, because if there was documentation set up, for example, a clause that you must have in the custody agreement, this child cannot be unenrolled unless both of you agree to it. Okay, because if I'd have had that clause, her mother couldn't have just yanked her out.
Right.
So anyways, so finally found her, went through all that, went through the court, got the custody order, got the consent order. Literally 2 weeks after we signed it, she was back with me in the school, in the place that I built. Her mother moved out of state.
Wow.
It was just like, and so I could immediately went back to court, and I could immediately filed contempt charges. I could say, you look, she literally just left, but I didn't, because one of the things that my attorney has always told me is like, even though you can file contempt charges, like judges don't like, a custody order in itself is petty.
Right.
Okay. So it is petty, and you can make it, if the other person signs it, you can make it as petty as you want, but just like anybody else, you don't like your time wasted. So you come to court with some bullshit, expect a little bit of irritation from the judge. So just be mindful about whenever you do sign this custody order, that like, don't just, because first off, it's going to cost you unless you don't have a lawyer. And then if you don't have a lawyer, expect some bullshit. So either expect to spend a lot of money, or just document what happens.
Right.
So I've had her in my care for the last 5 years. Had some issues where I had to call the police because something happened at her mother's house. Her mother's family was not very happy about it. I give zero fucks. I am her father that she knows, but I look at myself as more of an advocate because at some point in her life, she's going to want to see her biological father. She's going to want to meet him, and she may always consider me daddy, but the best interest of the child. So I've tried to maintain that for the last 5 years. Corona has been a very tough thing on everybody, isolation, you name it. And that took a toll, on us differently. So, one of the issues that I dealt with her mother was inconsistency. I mean, I don't get child support. Like, matter of fact, her mother specifically asked. She was like, "Well, I'll sign this as long as you don't go after me for child support." I'm like, don't get me wrong. I know there's people out there that are like, no, hell no, you owe me child support. For me, like, I didn't care. I cared when she didn't show up, when she didn't call.
Exactly.
Huh?
I have custody of my 5-year-old son, and I've had custody of him since almost before he was born. I never asked his mother for child support. I wouldn't take it if she was going to give it to me, because honestly, the way I look at it is, that's my boy, and he's living with me, so it's my responsibility to take care of him. You know what I mean? I got to buy a house. I got to have food. I got to have electric, transportation, all that anyway. And when you get child support and stuff like that, it just complicates shit, and it makes whoever's paying the child support feels entitled to whatever, and they want to know. No, I don't need all that. You know what I mean? I could take care of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
yep.
I got to tell you, I got to give you a lot of respect though, man, because there are a lot of dads, a lot of moms, in that situation, especially once they find out the child isn't biologically theirs, or if they know the child's not biologically theirs. A lot of them wouldn't go and do all the stuff that you did. I mean, that's a man. You know what I mean? That's my opinion. So how about now? Is
appreciate that, man.
Is the mom more active in her life now, or how are things going now?
Well, we had some issues. Like I said, we had some issues back in Jan. Yeah, my battery thing let me know. But my back in January, she had some issues, like I said, and like I said, the isolation.
Yeah.
Hell, man. I mean, I've had to go to one of her friends' funerals. Back from where we used to live, when we moved about 1.5 years ago, and during the Corona, man, one of our neighbors lived across the street. She used to play with. She used to call her best friend. She took pills and killed herself. She's 13, and I'm not telling her, I mean, because what do you tell her? So, and they don't talk that much now, so it's kind of like it kind of works, but it's from my situation, man, it's always been a double-edged sword with her mother being involved, because like when she wouldn't call, or when she wouldn't show up, or when she would say, "Hey, I'm going to come get her," and then doesn't come get her, like initially I was always telling her like, "Hey, mommy's coming on Tuesday. Hey, mommy's coming on Friday to come get you. Mommy said she'll call you back. She's about to call you in 15 minutes." And then she doesn't. And then I look like the asshole. I look like the one that's like, I'm lying to you. I'm not lying to you, but back in January, her mother, began to withhold visitation. And it was because of some emotional issues that, she was going through. And, it was against the custody order. The custody order explicitly stated, she's with me during the week, she's with you during the weekend. So I've had primary custody for the last 5 years. But with the situation being what it was, I was a little upset at first, but I was like, this is temporary because, this is something she's going through. So again, I caution anybody, don't just go, this is what the paper says. Because sometimes when you go to court, you can look like the asshole.
Absolutely.
Saying, well, this is what the paper says. So you have to be cognizant about what's going on. Document the conversation. But so her mother and I have been kind of on the outs since January, and I planned on filing some contempt charges, and I planned on hiring a parenting coordinator. Now, I don't know if you know what a parenting coordinator is, but it's cheaper than an attorney. So once you've got that custody order in place, if your significant other begins to be very high conflict and very, doesn't want to discuss things with you, just doesn't without your consent, or just doesn't follow the order other than custody schedule, and I believe it's one other thing that the parenting coordinator really doesn't like. They don't really like deal with so much, and I've considered getting one of those.
Okay.
Just because terms used as a mini judge. So, if you're dealing with a high conflict situation, you can afford an attorney. You can, if you can. I would consider going the parenting coordinator route because they're a little less expensive and they can make decisions pretty much on the fly. If you and your significant other are not on agreement on something, the parenting coordinator can be like, okay, let me hear your side. Okay, this is what we're gonna do. And then at that point, and again, it does depend on state, so I want to make sure that's clear. But at that point, it's an order. It's just as if the judge ruled it, and you can appeal it, but it gives you instantaneous. Let me use that very lightly. Instantaneous relief, and you may not agree with it, but if you are doing something, or if you are operating with the best interest of the child's mindset, then I would have a hard time believing that the parenting coordinator would not lean in your favor.
Right.
So
that's actually one of the things that I tell most dads when I talk to them when they're dealing with high complex baby mamas, which is basically when you're talking to her, don't ever get drug into, the whole tit for tat thing. It's just
never.
What is best for our child. That's what we need to find out. Because when you go up in front of a judge and she's trying to argue, something that's clearly selfish, and you're showing the judge that your interest is the child, that goes a long way. I mean, because when you go to court as a dad, they already look at you with a target on your back, and they're waiting to see, you to be aggressive or you to be, unreasonable or anything. So the best thing to do is be as professional as you can. Yep. and show that you're only worried about your kid, Like, it sucks to an extent because
it's
because basically, you have to sit there and let her act the fool in court and talk over you and, interrupt and stuff like that, and just be the bigger person. But I mean, that's what you got to do. It's just, you don't really have a choice in the matter, and it actually makes you look better.
Another thing that I would say to anybody, especially if they're going to attempt to get a custody order, is when you're putting a clause into the order, think short term. Don't think short term stuff. Think long term stuff. Think also think of actionable items. Like if, like say for instance, like there's plenty of clauses that say, neither party will do this, right? Sounds good. You agree to it, she's agreed to it, and then what happens? You leave the court and what the fuck they do? Exactly what it says don't do.
Absolutely.
Add to that clause before you sign that agreement and say instead of just say, you shall not do this, say if you do this, and it's found that you do this, you give up this or you give up that. Or if you're more than 30 minutes late to your exchange, then you forfeit, your visitation.
Right.
I mean, it sucks. It sucks, but it's like if you don't put it in there, trust and believe. If you do not put it in there at first, good fucking luck getting it put in there. Absolutely. Because now there's an order there, and it lives, and it's gonna live. Like what really bothers me with her is like it's living and breathing, and it's just like she treats it like it's like, yeah, we just agreed on that. Like it doesn't exist, and there's a significant cost in smacking her hand, because if you do it by yourself, then especially with a situation like me where you're in a third party type situation, I cannot go to court without a lawyer.
Right.
I don't have the biological factor in there. And and you would think that, I would never have problems.
You would think. I mean,
because the biological father's not there. I'm literally like, I don't ask you for shit. I like, when you didn't have a car, I took her to you, picked her back up. Like, you would think, man, but never underestimate the power of greed.
Yeah, it's true.
Somebody just can't have enough,
I know. And
they just don't want you to have something,
And let's be honest, the courts in general, I mean, they make money through conflict. If you and baby mama are fighting and you're running back and forth to court, that's better for them because they make money that way. If everybody was, amicable, everybody put the best interest of the kids first and didn't go to court, they'd all be out of a job.
Yep. So, I mean, I can just say, like, sometimes, like, if let's just say, for instance, that she begins, going against the order, and it's egregious, okay, over the top. All right, means it's just blatant. All right, clearly contempt. Like, if you don't have anything else, like, don't just jump to go take her to court for that. I mean, like, if it's visitation, that's a different story. Unless there's an outlier factor, unless there's something out there, like she's having emotional issues. Like, I don't know how the courts have handled Corona and COVID, given custody, because like there's a whole like infection factor there, right? Like,
yeah,
truly, you should have truly every schedule out here should have changed on the basis. I'm not gonna. Look, I consider COVID like politics and religion. You don't discuss it, because there's some people that are on this side of it that are like, oh, it's not real, it's just a flu. Some people are like, oh, it's death walking. Watch out, it's behind the tree. Okay, so I'm just strictly saying, based off of the policies that have come out, every custody schedule should have been modified to adhere to the at least a minimum like 14-day window that COVID could pop up.
Right. Well,
okay, that means that like you might have had your
good. What I've actually seen with a lot of it, it looks like there are a lot of parents that are going to get in trouble behind that, because it looks like the courts are looking at it as you're both parents, so you're both equally responsible to take care of the child if they're sick. So they're not like really taking, well, there's COVID as an excuse to keep the other parent from custody or to deny, your visitation.
And now that's what I'm saying though, is that that it shouldn't have been a denial. That's what I'm saying. It shouldn't have been you saying, well, I'm not letting them come over. It should have been, well, I'm not coming to get them. That's where, and again, I haven't been in court, I haven't had this discussion with any judges. So I don't know how they're going to treat it, but that's going to be another factor in that visitation that's going to come up, that did happen, whatever.
Right.
It wasn't really an issue for us, except for, my significant other, she kind of like, well, where was she? And I was like, well, she was at her cousin's, at a birthday party. And she's like, so just like, let her come over here. Like, has she been tested? And again, I'm like, it's kind of one of those things where, I don't know, man. I mean, it's like, I guess it's different for me because like, it's my kid. So like, I mean,
Right.
what do you do? Like, I mean, if my kid gets me sick, like, guess what? Like, I'm sick. Like, so, I can tell you my situation in court, I definitely got anxiety over it because like, I couldn't understand the response. Like, I'm not trying to take her from her. Like, I'm not trying to keep her from her. Like, she clearly wasn't stable. Like, and it's just like, I guess there's a mental illness factor there.
Yeah.
And when you combine that along with, you can't, somebody, it's kind of like, I hate to use this. I don't want to use that. I don't want to offend nobody. It's kind of like when you think you can do something, but you can't.
Right.
And people are like just standing there watching you literally flail on the ground because you're just failing. I just wasn't willing to do that with my daughter. I just wasn't. So it was a fight, and I mean, based off of what I've heard from guys on the forums, I mean, I definitely got off a little bit less expensive than they did. Could have been circumstantial, could have been financial circumstances that played a role there on the other side. But man, try at all costs to negotiate outside of court.
Right.
And when I say negotiate, I mean negotiate and then get a custody order outside of court. I don't mean like do like a paper and napkin agreement. I'm talking like talk it out, work it out, try to figure it out. Because once you start going through the hearings and the trials, like all those toys, like all those toys that you got, like you can't afford those no more because you're going to be paying the lawyers.
Yeah, oh yeah, and lawyers will kill you. I will tell you this though, I congratulate you. I'm very happy for you that you got your custody agreement because you would not believe the number of biological dads that have been fighting for 10 years, 20 years to try to see their kid, and they get bogus domestic violence orders, they get bogus molestation, complaints and whatever because these lawyers, they know that nothing's going to happen to mom. Like it comes out in court that, yeah, she lied. Okay, she lied. So now we can move on to something else. And then, 3 months later, she's making a new bogus, claim. And that's kind of part of the problem with what's going on now is like, if you make a claim like that against somebody and it's proven in court, I mean, they should be bound to like, if you're going to.
It should become criminal.
Right. If you're going to accuse somebody of something like that, then you should do the time that they would get for doing it if you lied about it. And that's just not
absolutely
how it works.
Absolutely. It's not. I'll be honest with you, man, because I don't have biological kids. And I want biological kids, but I'm gonna tell you, man, going through this situation right here, I mean, I've told my significant other, I'm like, I can see why guys pay the check and keep it fucking moving. You're fighting me for what? To be right? like again, best interest of the child. Like, is it the best interest of a child to have both parents? Yes, it is. You know, and I think it's just people are selfish, man. And I
Hey,
don't mean females only. I mean, you know, people.
yeah, hey,
People are selfish, and you gotta.
yeah, my baby mama for my son, she was an absolute, drug addict. And even though she had this major drug problem, I never kept my son from her. She might have had to be supervised by me with him until she got her act together.
Sure.
But I mean, you see moms and even dads in certain situations, they keeping the kid from their other parent to be petty, to be like, you don't want me anymore, so now you can't have the kid.
Yep.
And it's absolutely horrifying, because with moms, the court back them up on it. They don't, like, it's not like anything mom says in court is true, and anything dad says in court, you have to check 6 times, and then even when it comes out to be true, you're going to make sure.
I mean, trust but verified. Yeah,
Absolutely. Like, I don't really know what it's going to take to change that, but I know it's something that needs to change. And I think it's going to take, guys like you and guys like me and other things to actually come out and tell their stories and try to get, people to listen to it. Because today, even when you talk to most average people, it's all about deadbeat dad. You know what I mean? You never hear anything about deadbeat mom,
Right. Never hear about a deadbeat mama, man. Never hear about that. But they're out there.
Oh,
plenty of them.
Lots and lots of them are out there.
I'll say this. I think it goes deeper, even deeper than just an inequality. I think it goes down, and it's multicultural. So let's just make that clear.
Oh, absolutely.
It's almost psychological. It has, to me, it feels like something to do with our culture as it begins to continually to alter. The cancel culture, you gotta have it now culture. If it's not, I think it used to be 15 seconds. Now, you had 15 seconds to grab somebody's attention on an advertisement, and now it's 8, I believe.
Yeah, it's a lot less.
So it's just like the attention spans. Yeah, the attention spans are just, I don't know, man. I mean, I hate to sound like an old codger, back in my day,
right.
but I can see the shift. And dude, I'm not even 40, man. Like, so
yeah, you're actually
I don't know. I don't know why.
You're actually touching on something that I think is a really, really big issue in the way people look at custody and stuff like that. Because in a lot of the much younger generation, like way younger than us, they grew up in the me culture, which instead of putting themselves out there for somebody else, i.e. the child, their concern is, well, I'm going to miss them if they're with the other parent, or I'm going to need this, or I want, and it's I, and that is definitely a cultural thing. Like, I don't know how.
And like, I don't know, man. I mean, I think that like, I almost want to say like it's going to implode. Like that's my belief. I feel like you're gonna see, you're gonna see just more and more and more changes. And like it's almost like being caught in the river. Either you jump out and just just get on the edge of wherever you can, and and just kind of grab onto what you can, because it's going to continually change. It's going to continually get worse. And how to stop it? No clue. No clue.
Yeah, me. You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. I don't know what happened, but I completely lost the connection. And it just came back on. It went back on. So I'm hoping everything's still there. But yeah, I don't know either, like what it's going to take as far as changing people's minds. I guess they say that, after so much time in a culture, like children tend to rebel against their parents. So a lot of this, the way we were raised, it was, you gotta, stand up for yourself. You gotta, lose to know how to win and stuff like that. So what's old becomes new again. Now they're being taught that everybody's a winner and everybody gets a trophy. And I'm hoping at some point the teenagers rebel and go, you know what? No, I need to win. And I need, you know what I mean? Like sometimes, those things are cyclical.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Because it's like that. Just saying, okay, well, everybody gets a trophy. What? No. There's no participation trophy. But the thing is, you're seeing that all over, though, man. It's not even just that type of stuff. It's just like it's all over. It's like, like, where else? Participation trophies, like you've
But
got where
you can't offend
like say for instance, like who, huh?
You can't offend
You
anybody.
can't offend anybody.
Right.
My God, you had an opinion.
Right.
Oh,
Like,
like, well, then what are we doing?
like at some point in our society,
What are we doing?
I don't know, but at some point in our society, we went from, being told as children, like sticks and stones will break your bones, that names will never hurt you, to, somebody calling you a name is like being punched in the face. And like, it's kind of creating like a weak mentality in kids. Like, no, it's not right to bully people, and it's not right to be
Right.
and stuff like that. But you have to learn that life ain't fair, and sometimes you gotta ignore, things like the whole thing with like the transgender movement. I don't hate transgender people. Like if you're transgender, that's on you. But like to me, you know, your gender is the gender you were born with. And just because you want to be a girl or you want to be a boy doesn't mean that I have to pretend you are. You know what I mean? Like, but in society, if you don't,
Yeah.
transphobic and, you hate transgender people and, whatever. Like, you know what I mean? There's a new thing my kids are telling me from school
So
that if you won't date a post-operative transgender person, you're transphobic. It's not like you just prefer, to eventually have kids or something like that. If you hate transgender people, if you won't date somebody that's transgender, it's like, it's weird.
so I don't know if you know it or not. I don't know the name, so forgive me. You may have to do a little research. But the one that really like just kind of blew my mind was the senator or congressperson or something. They were the first transgender to be voted in the Congress or whatever. Okay, so I think, and I'm not trying to be an asshole here, so just like make sure that put that disclaimer out there.
Absolutely.
I think it was a she that was a he that was a he that was married to a he that saw himself as a she, and I'm just like
Right.
what do you,
Scorecard to figure it out.
I mean, like, what do you do? I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I mean, are we full circle? Like, what are we doing? So it just, yeah, that's I haven't heard that in school, in her school, but I don't doubt that.
Sorry, somehow I lost
You
you.
hear me?
I don't know. There's something wonky going on with my connection. Um, I guess what we
It's all
probably,
good.
yeah, I guess we should probably wrap it up. But I appreciate you coming and telling your story. And once I get it up on the podcast, please feel free to share it with anybody that you think will want to, listen to it. And I'm gonna, have it out everywhere. So anytime that you want to chat, or you're going through anything, you need somebody to listen, I'm always available, just so you know.
All right. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Have a good day, Sean.
You too, brother.